going down in the Middle East? We have so much to catch up on because I feel like every day something else crazy is happening with this war with Iran. So I'm going to break this down into 4 different parts so that people can follow along because I don't want people to get confused. Let's start with the first part. We're potentially looking at another never-ending war. We are looking at a possibility of ground troops, whether it's American ground troops or if it's troops that are bought off and paid for by Israel and the United States. And we'll get into this. So let's start with part 1, the ground troops and the never-ending war. Pete Hegseth has made it very clear himself that they're not really trying to wrap this up anytime soon, which means that we would be looking at another Afghanistan. Listen to this.
In a few days, in under a week, the 2 most powerful air forces in the world will have complete control of Iranian skies, uncontested airspace. I hope all the folks watching understand what uncontested airspace and complete control means. It means we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military, finding and fixing their leaders and their military leaders, flying over Tehran, flying over Iran, flying over their capital, flying over the IRGC, Iranian leaders looking up and seeing only U.S. and Israeli air power every minute of every day until we decide it's over. And Iran will be able to do nothing about it. B-2s, B-52s, B-1s, Predator drones, fighters, controlling the skies, picking targets, death and destruction from the sky all day long. We're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours.
So here we go until we decide when it is over. Those are the words from Pete Hegseth. And if that is the case, we are potentially looking at another Afghanistan type of war. These never-ending wars where there's actually no winner, but a lot of money is made for the military-industrial complex. They're just laundering money. Now we are looking at them moving closer towards ground troops. And they're really serious about this. I thought it like, okay, they're just saying things, but they're really serious about this. As you will see, when they speak to Iran foreign minister here, he is not wanting a ceasefire. And listen to the reason why he doesn't want one.
Right now, you're saying Iran does not want a ceasefire.
We are not asking for a ceasefire. And we don't see any reason why we should negotiate with the US when we negotiated with them twice, and every time they attacked us at the middle of negotiations. So there is no request for a ceasefire by us, and there is no request for the negotiation with the US from us. We have never sent any messages to them.
So you can't blame him here because here's the problem. Here's the problem. It's a trick that the US government does where they say that we're going to have negotiation talks. They start having these talks and then they bomb them anyway. That happened to Iran. These types of things also happen in Gaza. So why would they take them up on that again? So they're not looking for a ceasefire now. See, the time for all that is already passed. Remember when Iran said they were willing to sit down at the negotiation table and work something out? So now that Donald Trump, I guess, is trying to like, okay, wait a minute, we're getting hit kind of hard. Let's sit back and really talk this out. They don't want to hear it now. It's too late. This is also considering the fact that you have Israel and the United States who are actively working together to try to get the Kurds to attack Iran. Now, this has gone badly before. It's just like this has gone very badly before, and they're trying to revisit something like this again. Now, here's one of the reasons that they think may have led to that. I think this goes back years. I don't think it just came from this, but something that major happened is it was alleged that an Iranian drone hit a CIA station in Saudi Arabia. So we're going right back to Raja again in Saudi Arabia. It said there's no mention of any CIA personnel being wounded with the attack on the embassy, the latest in a series of Iranian attacks across the Gulf states. But we got a problem, right? I've seen the videos. Iran is pummeling Israel, these bases and institutions in Saudi Arabia, Qatar. And we're going to get to the global response in just a second, because it's not looking good for Israel. Tel Aviv is getting hit really bad. Despite what Trump is telling you, despite what Netanyahu's telling you, Tel Aviv is getting hit pretty bad. Iran is also getting hit bad. This is not just this go in and win and beat them kind of war. I think that Donald Trump underestimated the power of Iran. I really do. So one of the CIA locations in Saudi Arabia was hit. And now our CIA is trying to arm Kurdish troops to go into Iran and basically ignite a civil war. I kid you not. When all else fails, they'll try to use your own people against you. Let's get into this one here.
Multiple people familiar with the plan are telling CNN that the Trump administration is working to arm Kurdish forces, who they then expect to take part in a ground operation in Iran in the coming days. Let's get to this crucial reporting. The CIA working to arm Kurdish forces to stage some sort of a major ground operation going inside Iran. They want to spark an uprising. The details are incredible. What are you learning?
That's right, Erin. It's a lot to unpack. Honestly, this story continues to develop at a breakneck speed and often in mind-bending ways. We spent some time this evening with a senior Iranian Kurdish politician here in Iraqi Kurdistan, who basically told us that the expectation among Kurdish Iranian opposition forces is that they will be going into Western Iran as part of some kind of a ground operation over the course or at some point during the next few days, that they will have support from the U.S. and from Israel, though he would not be drawn as to what exactly that support will look like. He also told us that President Trump himself had called the leader of the KDPI, which is one of these Iranian Kurdish opposition parties, today, and that they had what he characterized, I should say, as a positive conversation, though again, he did not give any details. And he said that we should be prepared for some surprises potentially tomorrow. Again, not giving details, but this is all coming at the same time as our colleagues, Natasha Bertrand, Elena Treen, and Zachary Cohen, are learning that the CIA has been working to arm Iranian Kurdish opposition forces with the goal of fomenting civil unrest in Iran.
Long story short, the U.S. and Israel are trying to arm Kurdish soldiers to go into Iran and create a civil war. Now, we're going to talk a little bit here about the Kurds so you can understand where some of this is coming from. The U.S. does have a history working with Kurdish troops. They are basically placed on the border of Iraq and Iran. They are really trying to ignite a civil war in Iran, using their own people against them. Now, let's connect geopolitics to domestic politics for just a second. We have that happen here. We have corporations, we have infiltrators, we have intelligence agencies that for years have used members of their own community to start some type of rift in the group or organization they're a part of. A good example of that is the Black Panthers. How Intel basically paid other Black people to join the Black Panthers and to turn against Fred Hampton and other members of the Black Panther Party. Similar thing with Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. You guys get the gist of it. These things still go on today. But the CIA is very active and involved here. I want to explain to you why this is giving me bad vibes again, because it reminds me of what happened with Syria. Don't forget that this same strategy was used before with Syria. In fact, I'll take you back to that moment. Who are the Kurds and why is Turkey attacking them in Syria? Does everybody remember this? Let's go on a little bit more here. The Turkish invasion of Kurdish-held territory in northern Syria has complicated an already chaotic war. What began 8 years ago as a series of nonviolent protests against the Syrian government morphed into an international conflict between dozens of local factions. Let's go on a little bit further. This happened under Obama and, of course, Trump's first presidential term here. Peaceful demonstrations against Assad in 2011 and 2012. There were various factions vied for control of Syria. These included pro-government militias, rebels fighting for a more democratic state, Islamic extremists, and militias from ethnic and religious minorities seeking to protect their areas from attack. Among them were several Kurdish militias. So let's get into this part here. Under the Obama administration, at first Obama resisted to play a direct role in the Syrian war, but then later on he changed his mind as the Islamic State took advantage of the chaos of the war to capture vast swaths of Syrian territory and Iraqi territory. It goes on to say in 2014, the U.S. joined an international coalition against the militants, conducting airstrikes and later building military bases on Syrian territory to assist ground operations against ISIS. See, this just goes to show you again how these things do not work out, especially for the Kurdish people. How do they become an ally? As Islamic State fighters swept across Syria, the People Protection Units emerged as one of the few Syrian armed groups consistently able to take on extremists. When an international coalition led by the U.S. sought local partners to contain the militants, they saw the Kurdish militia as the safest option. So again, note that it was led by the U.S. Now let's go into the Trump presidency to show you what happened there. Of course, this was Trump's first term. There's a lot here. Sorry, guys. All right, fast forward. Trump suddenly changed his mind. Actually, we go back up to this part here. President Trump long wanted to withdraw American forces from Syria, saying that the U.S. must avoid endless wars. He first ordered withdrawal in December, but suspended the plan after Defense Secretary Jim Mattis resigned in protest. However, later on, Donald Trump changed his mind. That was on October 6th during a phone call with President Erdogan of Turkey. Then he ordered American troops to leave the border. That gave Turkey open access to Kurdish territory, and a force consisting of Turkish troops and their Syrian Arab proxies began an invasion on October 9th. So I wanted to give you a rundown of that for just a second, because what has been revealed is that Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu in particular, has had intelligence communications with the Kurds for quite some time. So it's not like he has not had communication with them. And ideally, what would happen is that the U.S. or Israel or both would come to the Kurdish troops and would say to them, if you go in and do this for us, we'll make sure that you get this. Problem is, that's not what ends up happening. And that's not what happened in Syria. Syria has become a complete, absolute disaster, as we told you it would. Right? So they're trying to use Iranian Kurds against the Iranian people. We'll pay you this if you do this, and we'll make sure that you get this. So the ground invasion may not necessarily be done by American troops. It seems like they're trying to use Kurdish troops to do the ground invasion. Everything we're learning so far from this Iran war is very clear to me that it seems like they don't really have a concrete plan. They obviously didn't even have a clear exit strategy. It feels like they're making it up as they go along. Now, when questioned about a ground invasion, you'll hear the foreign minister here say they are ready.
Boots on the ground in Iran. Are you afraid of a U.S. invasion in your country?
No, we are waiting for them.
You are waiting for the U.S. military to invade the ground troops?
Yes, because we are confident that we can confront them, and that would be a big disaster for them.
So you're saying that Iran is ready and willing to take on the U.S. military if there were to be ground troops?
Well, we were ready for this war even more than the previous war. So you can see, the quality of our missiles, how much they are upgraded after the last war, because we learned lots of lessons. And we are prepared for any other eventuality, even, a ground invasion. So our soldiers are prepared for any scenario. When I said that we are waiting for them, it didn't mean that we are waiting for continuation of the war. No, but we have prepared ourselves to confront with any scenario, with any eventuality, any possibility, and we know that we can handle that.
Oh, buddy.
Let's see how you do under pressure. Let's see how you do under pressure. Give them a name to remember. Hey, let's see how you do under pressure. Let's see how you do under pressure. A moment can live on forever.
A moment can live on forever. They are ready.
Are your allies Russia and China helping you?
Well, they are supporting us politically and otherwise.
Guys, this is why I say it's heading towards World War III. This is not, guys, you got to remember, they've been preparing for this for 20 years. They knew at some point Israel and the US were going to come after them and attack them. They have had decades to get ready for this. He said that so calmly, like a G. He sat there and just said, yes, we are ready for them. And they have the backing of Russia. They have the backing of China. It's an absolute disaster. Remember who struck first. The US and Israel decided to strike them first. Let's go to part 2. We went from ground invasion. Now we're going to some clarifications about this war. There have been war crimes that have been committed. And Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are lying to the American people. One of them happened in international waters against an Iranian ship that was defenseless. Let's go ahead and get into this. What happened with this invitation from India? An unarmed Iranian ship was invited to take part in an Indian naval exercise alongside the United States. Its sailors were welcomed on land and paraded before the president as a gesture of cooperation. Then, at the last moment, the U.S. abruptly withdrew from the exercise, only to turn around and torpedo the very ship it had just stood beside. What followed was even more grotesque. After attacking an armed vessel, the U.S. refused to rescue the sailors it had thrown into sea, abandoning them to drown. The grim work of recovering bodies was left to the Sri Lankan Navy. This wasn't warfare. It was treachery of the most disgraceful kind, an ambush carried out under the pretense of diplomacy, followed by a cold refusal to show even the most basic human decency to the dying. It would represent a collapse of every norm that supposedly governs civilized conduct at sea. And yet, instead of outrage, much of the American media response has been indifference or rationalization. So this happened recently. Here's some animation here to show you. We'll mute the music here. So again, this event called Milan 2026. Again, defenseless Iranian ship. It was defenseless. And the U.S. knew that. That is a war crime. That is international waters. And they know that's against international law. But they did it anyway. Just like Israel, they continue to commit war crimes. Now, we have Conwall here. He is the former Indian foreign secretary. He responded about this and said the Iranian ship will not be where it was if it had not been invited to take part in our Milan exercise. We were the host. I am told that as per protocol for this exercise, ships cannot carry any ammunition. It was defenseless. The Iranian Navy personnel had paraded before our president. The attack by the U.S. submarine was premeditated as the U.S. was aware of the Iranian ship's presence in the exercise to which the U.S. Navy was invited, but withdrew from participation at the last minute, presumably with this operation in mind. The U.S. has ignored India's sensitivities as the ship was in these waters because of India's invitation. We are far from politically or militarily responsible for the U.S. attack. Our responsibility is a moral and human plane. So he is saying that India is not responsible for what happened here. Many are believing that India was a part of it, that this was a setup or a trick by India. We may never know, but that's a war crime and that's messed up. A lot of corporate media isn't even touching on it the way that I did. They won't tell you it was wrong. That tells you everything. Then there is this clarification that they attempted to make about the schoolgirls, the girls that were bombed. And I want to show you just how awful Pete Hegseth, whatever he is here, has been. This guy is so bad at his job. He puts up this map that is supposed to show that the U.S. weren't at fault, but it actually shows the U.S. were at fault. Listen to him here.
Tie right there. You got a tie on.
Yeah. Thank you. Come back with the BBC. Can you give us an update on what the administration knows, what you know now about the reported strike on a girls' school in southern Iran on Saturday?
All I can say is that we're investigating that. We, of course, never target civilian targets, but we're taking a look and investigating that. Red tie in front.
Just on the basis that with the information you would have, your reconnaissance abilities, ability to gather information, I mean, it's several days on now. So is there any clarity on whose munition this was?
We're investigating it. Thank you.
So he said they were investigating it, right? Okay. Let me show you the map that he posted here. This map that he posted, I guess that was supposed to be his defense and say, well, we didn't know that was a school. You see this green dot? School. The map actually doesn't help his case. This is what happens when you put people in a position and they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Right in the middle of the strike map, U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth proudly displayed at a Pentagon briefing today sits Manab, the site of the school in southern Iran where a U.S.-Israeli strike killed 165 children this weekend. He said they're still investigating, right? But if you notice, journalist Chris Osiek plotted the Manab school green dot on the strike map released by the U.S. military today. It sits briefly within the cluster of U.S. strike zones shown on the Pentagon briefing map. So as you'll see here, these strike zones, these are the little orange diamonds or squares, however you're looking at it. Right there is the school. So why would you even have a strike zone here and the school's right there? This is no different from what Israel has been doing when they were bombing those Palestinian schools. And there's more. They've attacked more schools in Iran. Again, shout out to Dropsite News. They've been doing a good job. More schools struck and damaged in U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. The missile hit 2 schools in the town of Parand, south of Tehran. This is according to state-affiliated Fars news agency. The Israeli military said Thursday it had begun a large-scale wave of strikes against infrastructure in Tehran. The campaign has drawn comparisons to Israel's Dia doctrine, a strategy associated with 2006 Lebanon war that calls for disproportionate force and large-scale destruction of infrastructure in areas linked to hostile groups to pressure civilians and create deterrence. So you can see the pictures here. That's another school. So we saw all of this before with Gaza. They're killing civilians again. This is not a new thing. And the US government is lying about it again. Different administration, same bullshit. Pardon my language. So they have been doing this. I told you they have this thing where they go after the kids. Let's go to the next part, Eric. Where they go after the kids, they always try to, especially Israel, they like to kill the children because they don't want them to be future Iranians. They don't want them to grow up and reproduce and make more. So they try to kill them when they're young. Another clarification. This one is all a doozy. The UK came forward and they said that a Shahed-like drone, Iranian drone, targeted the RAF base in Cyprus. Now that's in Greece, right? So they say that they were targeted there and it was an Iranian drone that did it. When I first heard this, I said, I call BS. You know why? Sounds like Israel would have done that. Let's not forget that when this war kicked off, Benjamin Netanyahu tried to enter Greece. He tried to get into Cyprus and they rejected him. Even Sky News had to come back and retract the statement that Iran did that strike. Listen to this. Wild things, folks, wild things.
Let's just update you with some of the latest information that we're getting from the Ministry of Defence, and this is about UK military use around the Gulf. We're hearing overnight RAF Typhoon and F-35B jets continued defensive air operations across the Middle East with support from Voyager air-to-air refuelling in defence of British interests and allies. Important, I think, that the word defensive operations and defence is included in that from the Ministry of Defence, as Keir Starmer has made it very clear that is what UK troops are doing, defensive operations only. They can also confirm that a Shahed-like drone which targeted RAF Akrotiri on the 2nd of March, that was the drone that came in at midnight. They are saying that that was not launched from Iran. So that is interesting and significant. They are not giving us any information as yet as to where they think that was launched from. But a drone that hit RAF Akrotiri, that was the one I think that caused damage to the airstrip, did not come from Iran, was not launched from Iran, obviously may well have come via Iran. And in the last...
So they had to come and they had to retract it. There are a number of false flags that are happening during this war. And some of these things that they're blaming Iran for doing, Iran is not doing. Israel and the US are out there doing false flags. Like I said, it made the most sense that Israel would have been the one that did that because they would not let Netanyahu come in. They want a world war. They want more people to get involved and help them take down Iran. So they're going to try to make it look like, look, Iran's even attacking Cyprus. Look, they're all over here now. Meanwhile, Israel is also attacking Lebanon at the same time. One that we also need clarification on, this one is new as well. Iran claims that a drone struck an aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln. Now, this one we're waiting for confirmation on, but you guys know the USS Abraham Lincoln, we talked about the ship earlier on before this war kicked off. They were already in the seas in the Middle East, and there's a lot of American soldiers on that ship. It says Iran claimed that its IRGC Navy drone struck down U.S. aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln near the Strait of Hormuz as it approached the area from the Gulf of Oman. Iranian authorities did not provide evidence to support the claim. The U.S. has previously rejected similar Iranian statements about attacks on the carrier, saying the missiles or drones involved did not come close to hitting the vessel. So we don't know, but this is what is being alleged at this point in time. What I'm here to tell you is that this war is not going the way the U.S. thought that it would go. And they are lying to the American people and making you think they're going out there and they're just, oh, we're getting everybody. We're taking them down. Tel Aviv has been hit massively. I've seen these hits that have broken through the Iron Dome. That's no cakewalk. The U.S. bases that have been hit in the other countries in the Middle East, whether Saudi Arabia, Qatar, these are not like gentle hits. And I would say Iran hasn't even unleashed the full force that they could unleash yet. So it is not good for anyone. We move to part 3, which is the global impact. Israel, while they are bombing Iran, is also bombing civilians in Lebanon. That's right. Hezbollah has also entered this as well. This is Beirut. Israel is wiping out entire apartment buildings in Lebanon's capital at 2 a.m. while families are sleeping. Not a military base, not a battlefield. These are civilian homes. Here we go. So do you see? You see how they're coming after people in Lebanon? You see how they play dirty? They're attacking civilian homes. Now, this brings France back into the picture because Macron just recently was talking about, oh, we should send a ship to help out Israel and the U.S. But after this attack in Lebanon, now Macron is singing a different tune. And you're not going to believe this, but I'll show you for yourself. France to send armored vehicles to Lebanon, Macron says. Now we're entering into this World War III type situation where you have France. I don't know what Macron doing. 1 minute he want to dance with Israel, another minute he want to dance with Lebanon. But what he goes on to say here is that France will strengthen its cooperation with the Lebanese armed forces and provide them with armored transport vehicles, as well as operational and logistical support. Macron says this as Lebanon was pulled deeper into the war with the Middle East earlier this week. Everything must be done to prevent this country, which is close to France, from being dragged into war once again. In this moment of great danger, I call on the Israeli Prime Minister not to extend the war to Lebanon. I call on the Iranian leaders not to involve Lebanon further in a war that is not its own. So this is wild. This is wild. So you see what's happening now? France says, wait a minute, you're attacking Lebanon. This actually impacts our interests. We're going to send some help for Lebanon. This is so messy. This war is so messy as war can be. We continue on with the global impact, and this is something that can impact a lot of people. When we talk about Qatar just decided to shut gas liquefaction. Qatar shuts gas liquefaction, and it says will take weeks to restart. Guys, this is not a game. Now is not the time to sit around and say, oh, I wonder what the Kardashians are doing. Now is not the time to Netflix and fucking chill. This is not a game. The gas prices are already starting to increase. I saw it when I was at the pump. So here we go. Qatar declared force majeure on gas exports on Wednesday amid the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, with sources saying it may take at least a month to return to normal production volumes. The move means global gas markets will experience shortages for weeks, even in the unlikely scenario the conflict ends today, as Qatar supplies 20% of global liquefied natural gas. These are the global implications here with this war. Pay attention to the gas pump. Here's the biggest one that I think everyone needs to pay attention to. The US empire is declining. Right now, one of the biggest global implications is what was announced earlier today. Let me make this bigger. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar are discussing withdrawing from contracts with the US and canceling future investment commitments in the US to alleviate some of the economic strain imposed upon them by the Iran war. The end of the US empire. This is from Financial Times, if you're wondering the source of this here. I had to use this version because you have to subscribe to them and pay, and I'm like, fuck that. The official said 3 of the 4 big Gulf economies, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar, had jointly discussed the strains being put on their budget and economies, but they declined to name the states. A number of Gulf countries have begun an internal review to determine whether force majeure clauses can be invoked in current contracts, while also reviewing current and future investment commitments in order to alleviate some of the anticipated economic strain from the current war, especially if the war and related expenses continue at the same pace. In other words, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar said, you're on your own. This is where shit gets real. They can walk away from us at any time. You guys get it? Saudi Arabia does not need the United States. The United States needs Saudi Arabia because they have a lot of oil. This is that decline of the US empire that I was referring to. This is probably one of the most scariest things. And this is what Donald Trump is playing with. That's why he wanted to go get and kidnap Maduro, because he wanted to be able to use that oil from Venezuela. But that in itself is not going to be enough. Then you think about, as much as we talk about China and Russia, this was kind of funny. Here's Xi Jinping. Bro, you seeing this? There's Putin. There's Xi Jinping said, hold up, got a line. North Korea, bro. This is what happens when we don't want to be a part of a multipolar world and you want to police the world. And you, for years, have told all these other countries they have to bend to your will. Eventually, other countries decide to lock arms with their buddies and their neighbors and say, fuck you. That statement there from the Big Four could be the first step of us seeing the other Arab nations aligning with each other and not the United States. And 4, the final part is Congress. Congress is the one that's supposed to declare war. Obviously, under a Trump administration, Trump just does whatever the hell he wants to. This is where the Democratic Party should come in and be a true opposition party and fight back against Donald Trump. But let me show you what they're doing. This is how they play in our faces. We're in it. Democrats won't rule out giving Trump more money for Middle East war. Make this smaller so you can see where it's from. Politico. And here you have Alyssa Slotkin CIA, Alyssa. The Democratic Party is not willing to walk away from giving Donald Trump more money for war because they want the war too. That includes Elizabeth Warren and her performing ass out there saying, Donald Trump is saying that he's going to do this. This war is crazy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have a plan. But you stood up and clapped for it at the State of the Union address when he talked about bombing Iran, Liz. It's all theater. Hakeem, Schumer, they all support the war. They don't want to say this publicly because they don't want to sound just like Donald Trump. But the more you start to see this type of behavior, you start to see there isn't as much difference as you thought between these people. Because they all fight for the military industrial complex and they all fight for the corporations. They don't fight for you. That's what both parties have in common. Also in Congress, Thomas Massie did bring forward the War Powers Resolution. I want you to look at the way that they voted. Gen X Girl said they will not stop this war. They will pass bill after bill, walking us step by step into accepting war. Look at these numbers. I'm going to show you how this is intentional, right? 215 Republicans voted yes. 157 Democrats voted yes. That's 372. Okay. 53 Democrats voted nay. Watch this.
On this vote, the yeas are 372, the nays are 53, 2 recorded as present. 2/3 being the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the resolution is agreed to.
So what they do, this is what they do, guys. What they do is that they make sure that they have just enough votes so that it does not pass. They will pass this bill after bill, walking a step into accepting war. Motion to suspend the rules and agree. Let's go to the Thomas Massie one. I'm going to go to the Thomas Massie one real quick. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I forgot to add this one. It's so much stuff to cover. Here we go. Now, this is the War Powers Resolution one. He said it failed, but we put everyone on record. Look at the votes. 2 Republicans said yes. 210 Democrats said yes. That's 212. 215 Republicans said no. 4 Democrats said no. That's 219. Look at these 4 Democrats. Notice how they always have just enough so that it doesn't pass. That's on purpose. If you haven't heard it from any other podcaster, I'm going to tell you that's intentional. They have a couple of people in the Democratic Party that'll play the rotating villain. That's how they stop shit from passing. Many of us remember Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin doing that under the Biden administration. But the good thing is that Thomas Massie said we got them on record. So here's what I would say. All those people that voted against the War Powers Resolution should be removed from office. All of them, the Republicans and the Democrats, get their asses out. Stop voting for these people just because. If anything, they haven't shown you that they earned your vote anymore. It is going down in the Middle East. This war with Iran, I told you, would not be easy, would not be a cakewalk. The U.S. is not going to win this war. Israel is not going to win this war. I don't even know if anyone's going to win. Answer that poll question if you can, because I'm curious if you think anyone would actually win. But this is not Afghanistan. I feel like they're trying to make it that way. They're going to try to make this 20 years in Iraq just like it was 20 years in Iran, just like 20 years in Afghanistan. Pete Hegseth we will go for as long as possible. And here's the other thing. People are less likely to vote someone out of office during war. And Donald Trump knows that. So we're going to keep an eye on this, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, every day it's new news, new information. But this is wild. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.